Beyond Goodbye is a podcast that empowers listeners to engage with death and grief in a healthy and transformative way, and therefore may contain material not suitable for all audiences. So listener discretion is advised. You have all probably heard the saying that goes something like this: resentment, hate, anger is like drinking a poison and waiting for the other person to die. When we feed our hate, we create for ourselves and those around us a lot of damage, both physically and emotionally. Forgiving, they say, releases us from continuing to live in the darkness and rids us of the poison. In today's episode, we are going to discuss forgiveness with my guest, Damone Presley, father to Natasha Flug Presley, one of the four murdered with my daughter and dumped in a cornfield. This is episode 6, To Forgive or to Not Forgive. Well, hey listeners, question for all of you. Are there actions that are so bad they're unforgivable? Think about that as we talk today about forgiving, what it means, and how some of us choose to forgive and some of us don't. But first, I'd like to welcome Damone to our show and have him share his story of loss. Welcome, Damone, and thank you for being here today.
Welcome. Thank you for having me on today. Yeah, kind of excited, a little nervous. Yeah. Hello, everybody.
Don't be nervous. You're the second person I've had on here that was nervous too. She was nervous about sharing her story, but as we get going, you'll be calm and not even realize you're talking into a microphone. So, Tasha and Jasmine were in the same vehicle. They both were murdered by the same man, along with my son and Lois. Tell us a little bit about, how did you find out?
I had got a call from Natasha's mother, and not with knowing what had happened, but prior early morning, she had called and asked, "Have I talked to Natasha?" And I had let her know, no, I didn't. I had the grandkids with me,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know if I was the last person to see my daughter, family-wise. Yeah. So later, I want to say that afternoon, mother had called me back and had told me what had happened.
Mm. I found out from, Kathy had called me, Natasha's aunt, and was asking if I'd seen the girls because she hadn't heard from Tasha and said that was really odd. And, I don't check on Jasmine's everyday stuff when she's working and out with her friends, but it had gotten to the point where we then filed a police report, and Kathy had shared some things with me, so I called the Dunn County, I called the coroner's office, and I asked them. I'd heard the story that they found this vehicle in a cornfield, and I was like, that's not them, but I'm going to call anyway. And they had put me on hold forever, and then I asked if they had brought 4 bodies in, and the woman got quiet and then put me on hold, and it seemed like forever. What they were doing, when I found out later, is they connected me to the detective that was on the scene. And so when I talked to him, he told me, of course, he couldn't say, who they were. They didn't know. But then he asked me and he said, Jasmine and Matthew's cell phone passwords. So then I knew, and that's how I knew. And I was in the family, besides Matthew, who was murdered with her. I was the last time we spoke was that Friday when she was working with me. She was filling out her life insurance stuff, and she was asking me some questions on what to fill in, And then she like did this little flip with her hair. She was always kind of silly that way. I'm sure you
Yes.
know, you've been around her. And she just said, "But we all know you're dying first." And then 2 days later, she was dead.
Yes.
It was, and the person she had listed on her life insurance was also murdered with them,
Yes.
Lois. So it was pretty surreal. I won't say it's surreal now, but it still feels a little unbelievable when I really think about it. Like I can look at the pictures all day long, but when I start to think about our last conversations or the kids or things that they're missing, I'm still like, to say that they're murdered is, I don't know, it's just so out of this world to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, for me, it's still unbelievable. It's reality, but you know, um, yeah, I still can't fathom that reality. It is our truth, you know. So yeah, and you know, so I had the same or similar as you were saying because some of those things was shared with me by mom that you know a vehicle was found,
Hmm.
4 people were in it, and you know, and I just kept saying, well, what does that have to do with them?
That's what I said to Kathy.
Yeah,
I'm like, what does that have to do with Jasmine and
yeah,
Tasha?
yeah. So I'm just you know, and you had said something that I was saying or similar with my daughter. You know, her dad, I'll call you when I'm coming back to get the kids. Okay, you know, and so that's how I was responding when they were saying those things, and you know, and I said, well, there's been plenty of times they have went out and
Yeah.
they haven't called back, and then all of a sudden, Dad, we're on our way, you know,
Right.
or whatever that is. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, cool, you know. So I really, you know, didn't think anything else.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
didn't either. In fact, I was irritated. Like, you could have at least called. You probably didn't plug in
Yeah.
your phone. I hate when
Yeah.
you don't, because she'd never plug her
Yeah.
phone in.
Yeah.
So it was always dying on her, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, ugh.
And I remember I got up early that morning, about 6:30 ish. Some just woke me out of my sleep, so I called, and it went right to voicemail.
Yeah.
You know, but that was not anything unnormal.
Unusual. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that has happened. So, you know,
right.
and so I remember saying, you know, quit thinking like that, because what are you saying?
Right.
That's what I kept asking her. And so I kind of got frustrated and just hung up on them. So you just kind of made me remember that.
Yeah,
And so, yeah.
yeah. Well, today's show, we're going to talk about forgiveness. And I know I approached you about it a few days ago, and I'd asked you, have you forgiven him? And what did you say to me?
No.
You said, hell no.
Hell.
Yep. And then asked me if I had forgiven him, and I said yes. And so I want to present those two different positions and talk a little bit about forgiveness. I don't use the word forgiveness. I have a issue with that word because to me, I'm not a Christian. I don't practice Christianity. I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. And to me, forgiveness, when I hear forgiveness, and I know everyone says it's for me and not for them, but I see in my mind these people you'll see in these like real life court stories and things. You'll see these families of murdered children go up to this person who did that and tell them they forgive them. And then it's like a kumbaya story where they're now having a relationship with this person. And so forgiveness to me was like, and they were all Christians. They would always say, well, I'm a Christian, and you know, the Bible says I have to do this. And so because I have some history with issues with Christianity, that always kind of put me off. So I called it releasing. But like you, when I first started, we talked about this in I have a group of women that I spent time with, and we talked about forgiveness and how it was important to do that. And we were specifically referencing a book called The Four Altars by Alonso del Rio. And in there, he's a Peruvian shaman medicine man. And he talked about the true way to enlightenment, not the love and light that we hear of, you know, your
Yeah.
people now who are
Yeah.
these new agey stuff. True love and light. All of it, you cannot attain that without forgiving. Now I'm on my spiritual path, right? I have been really introspective the last probably 5 years or so and gotten real serious in the last 3 or 4 years. And so moving along in this path to become more enlightened is something I wanted to do. But when I heard him talk about in this group we were talking about that, he said that if you won't attain that if you don't forgive, we opened it up to everybody for discussion, and I was like, I'm not forgiving shit. You know, I was like, this man can rot in hell for all I care. You know, forgiveness isn't for him. It's not for me. I feel like that people, you know, if I don't say I forgive you, that's how I viewed it was for him, and not for me. So I sat with that for a long time, and it made me I got physically sick, but I didn't realize what that was from, you know, the body. It was only until, so I jumped ahead with everybody where I'm telling my story of why I forgave. So it was a year ago now, and I was doing some ritual work and some prayer, working on something else that I had to work through on my own, you know, what we call shadow. And I was near the end of completing what I was doing, and then Spirit spoke to me and said, you have to include Antoine. And I was like, what? This is my conversation now. I was like, I'm by myself doing this, so I'm talking out loud by myself. And I'm like, I am not, first off, I don't know this man, and he's not even part of what I'm doing right now. This is not part of this shadow work. I'm not forgiving him, not letting that go. And there was back and forth with Spirit. And then eventually, as you know, and this is, I think, for any even religion, when you're praying and you're having a connection with the divine, if you continue to argue and continue to say no, the message gets quieter. I mean, then pretty soon you don't hear it anymore. So it was getting quiet. And the last message that I had heard was, if you don't do this, you will not move forward in your spiritual path. You'll be stuck. Well, I want to move forward. So I was like, fine, I'll pray. Here's how my prayer started. So, yeah, hoping that Antoine thinks about his actions in prison, hope that his family, you know, aren't hurt, or the kids aren't hurt for it. I went on. It wasn't even real. Wasn't even a real prayer. I didn't care. It was very sarcastic. And in praying, for those who pray, you kind of know intuitively when the prayer is done, when you've said what you've needed to say and it's been heard. And you know when it's not. And this one was not. And I had to keep talking until, you know, until I knew inside that I was done. Well, funny thing happened. As I was being sarcastic and saying stuff I didn't really believe or care, the words changed. I don't even remember all the words. It took on a whole different life. And I spent probably the next 10 minutes in deep prayer for Antoine. And when I finished, this ritual required us to take some tobacco, which is for like honoring the earth and Mother Earth. And you hold it in your left hand and over your heart, and because that heart means love. And then you put it into a little tie, and then you burn it. And that smoke releases into the universe or to Creator your prayers. And when I did that, I will tell you that I felt like I was 10 pounds, physically 10 pounds lighter. I knew that I had released or forgiven, and I've not had any issue with it since. And then the physical ailments that I was having within my body, my mobility, started to slowly change, and now I'm fully mobile. I believe it's for the forgiveness. And that's kind of my journey and why I chose that. So I'm curious for you, and there's no right way, guys. One thing I want to make clear is deciding whether you want to forgive something, especially something that, like what happened to our children, is deeply personal. There is no right or wrong way. I'm not the only right person because I forgave, and somebody like Damone who's not ready to or may never forgive doesn't make him wrong. There is no right or wrong way. It's whatever works for us and for our own well-being. If for our well-being you just can't forgive and you're not going to, then that's what you have to do. You know, it really doesn't matter that these different manuscripts and things, they say that we have to. I hate that word, we have to. You have to, you should. I can't stand those words. I just really think it's a very deeply personal thing, and not any one way is right or wrong. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Can I get to a place possibly for forgiving him? I probably could. And yes, I've thought about it. So early when, we were faced with this, because I'm a spiritual person, right?
Yep.
I don't have no ideology or no specific religion, though I am Methodist, but I'm spiritually,
Right.
I used to ask myself, could I find forgiveness? And I do believe in Christians, and as you were saying, quote unquote, you have to forgive, and so you said this is something personal. So for myself, I used to ask myself, could I? And to myself, and now saying to the world, yeah, I could, but I'm not at that place right now. I visit my daughter every day at the cemetery, and so I haven't found. I have let go, but I haven't let this go. It is something for me that I don't think I'll ever be totally healed. It changed my life forever.
Yep.
I'm still struggling. And so I think about our daughters, your son, Jasmine's boyfriend, that innocent people. And I know of countless innocent people, and probably people who are going to be listening to this knows innocent people lost their life for no reason.
Yeah.
And our children ended up in that. And so for me, right now, I can't find that because these are innocent people thinking, going to have a good time, like we know our children have normally do, normally done, and that was their outgoing, to have a good time. And for, I'm sorry, I can't even say his name, this punk, killed our children for no reason. And so my anger is still there.
Yeah.
And for my forgiveness to come, I have to work on me with that first. But do I think I can get to that place? Yes, because all people, even sad to say, this chump should be forgiven too. I do think about whatever his problem was that particular day, but just whatever he has been through, gone through, and what led, because I'm spiritual, so I believe in there's good spirits and there's evil spirits. And so with that understanding for myself, I have to see as a person, I don't believe that he would have done what he did. So that evil spirit that possessed that moment, that time in this punk, that I'm more mad at that. And so let me say this. I didn't see no remorse from him.
Nope, I didn't either.
I didn't see, like, maybe I did something wrong.
Right. No
Could
apology.
I have done something different? I didn't feel, see, or hear any of that from him.
Nope. He blamed our kids.
He blamed our kids. It was their fault. And it's one thing when you don't know somebody, but I know our kids. We know our kids.
Yeah.
And I know they wouldn't put a hand or hurt anybody, let alone, wasting their time with this punk.
Right.
Where they thought they were going to just kick it, have fun,
Yeah.
do what young adults do,
Yeah. On to the next party.
and on to the next one, and we'll see you next week.
Right.
And so with that, I cannot find to forgive him at this time, and that's why I said hell no, because I keep thinking about how our children were full of life,
Yeah.
And I miss daddy, hey pops, it's like that overweighs me trying to forgive somebody that took that from me, from us, that our children shouldn't be in the next life and not here with us continuing to
And
live
their
our
kids.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what Jasmine said to you, all I heard was my daughter saying something like that to me. Dad, you're getting old, and I'm going to be the one to take care of you.
Right.
And it's like, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I want to ask you about this. So one of the things that in this group of us that we're talking about, that this author Alonso del Rio says, is that we're all born innocent. We're all born pure. And then from that time to the time that, he made the choice he did about our children, what happened in between that time that caused him to decide to go that route? Now, when I say that I've released him, I have no intention of getting to know him. I don't want to write to him. I would never read anything he'd write to me. If something happened to him in prison, oh well, that's the risk. I mean, that's the choice you've made that put you in that position, in that place, and there's dangers to that place. So I'm not like the TV folks where they're, getting to know him and now he's being real remorse. I have no intention of getting to know you. I have no intention of really thinking about you anymore, other than when we do these shows, but I don't think about him like I did because it's taking energy from me that I can't get back. And in my opinion, so was my being so angry with him. It gave him this power over me that I've decided he can't have. And not only did it give him the power, it caused me to give power to other people around me that didn't have my best interest, or I was blinded by certain things also that I allowed to happen. So my boundaries were weak, if there were any at all. And in being able to take that back, I was able to, it had an all-encompassing thing. I was able to take back a lot of stuff, make a lot of changes that were for the better for me, I think. But I get it, not being in that place, because 2 years ago I wasn't in that place. 2 years ago, I won't even tell you what I was thinking 2 years ago. Because, I would have been, I will say this.
I think I did, because we talk regularly. So.
Yeah. I remember my dad telling me once, he goes, well, you're not going to do that. I'll do it. I'm 74 years old. I can go to prison. I'm like, okay, So, so yeah, I think it was just I don't know, a light switch for me when I was doing this prayer ritual over other things, and the idea that I needed to include that for my own spiritual path to move forward, which you probably know too. And you said something, I'm going to read this from the book. You said something about working on something inside of you before you can be in that place. And that's really, it's interesting you say that, because that's what he talks about in the book. He says that it is not enough to say, I forgive you. First, we must release the sick emotion that lives deep within us. We must travel to the depth where the wound is, and from there, try to understand. That is, to include in our love the person who caused us the suffering. That's deep. That's hard to do, because how do you do that when that person took the people you loved the most? That's hard to do. And then he went on to say, we have to embrace them, embrace their ignorance, embrace their suffering, and their unconsciousness. Unconsciousness meaning to being a little more enlightened to the world and our communities and ourselves. And at that moment, we can see before us an opportunity to let go or to not let go, to grow or to wait until the next round. And that made me think of that with what you just said, that you have to work with something deep in, and you do. I think forgiveness is something you have to really. You can't forgive and love anyone if you aren't dealing with your own internal stuff first. And sometimes we never get to that place, and that's okay. I mean, if you don't get there, you don't get there. But being aware of that, I guess, is that was interesting that you said that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's work in progress.
It is.
It is. It's work in progress. That was my first child.
Mine too.
And we always say our best friend, but that's actually true.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I miss, it's like when I'm in a moment, or I don't know, it was a telepathy or just this spirit connection, this father-daughter connection. She'll call, and I catch myself sometimes when I'm in that place. That's the first person I would call.
Yeah.
And I've caught myself even 2 years later, sometimes in the act. And
Yeah.
I pause and I say, oh.
On my the last two podcasts, I said the same thing. I was saying that to the Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor, but also my son and I were talking about it, and I said just a couple weeks ago, it was something at work, and I grabbed my phone to text Jazz, and I couldn't believe I did that. Like, in that, my heart stopped, and I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
It's been 2 years.
Yeah.
And then I was a mess. So then I was like, oh my gosh. And then the tears flowed, and I had to walk away from my desk. And none of that's going to go away.
Yeah.
I think it'll be that way forever.
Yeah.
I think we're always going to have an open wound that we just have to continue to dress and care for so that it doesn't become infected.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, part of that was the forgiveness part, even though I still have the wound,
Yeah. And I like, I think we need to share this with the audience. Me and you have something where we're in a place, and it's like either I'll text you, call you, you'll text me or call me, and for me that helps me, and it's not forgiving that punk, but like it helps me forgive myself, because in some of me, I don't feel guilty, but as a protector of my children, and every time if there was anything that my daughter needed or her safety, dad's on speed dial, and if I could trade places, I would.
Me too.
And I don't even question that. Sometimes we'll say stuff like that, but that is a sincere truth. And I think about the day I came and picked my grandchildren up. I was speaking at a convention, and prior to getting the kids, my daughter was calling me like, 35, 40 minutes. And she was like, Dad, where you at? I said, I'm coming. I told you I'm at the convention. She was like, all right, well, your grandbaby, she wants you to come on, And I said, well, why don't you come? But my grandmother was brought home because she was passing. And so the family was caring for her as she was, passing on. And she passed 2 days after Our children were taken from us. And so Tasha was there taking care of my grandma with my mother and other family members who had came in town. And, but Tasha had spent prior the night at my mom's. And she said, well, Dad, if you would have let me know earlier, I would have came to the convention. And I said, well, why don't you come on? She said, well, I'm here, and I was like, yeah, okay, that's true. And I can't remember if she had the car there or not, because I think I was trying to talk her into coming. She was like, yeah, I would have. So, and that continues to go through my head. And, me and my daughter were open. She would talk to me about any and everything. And even if, I know she's with Jasmine, I know. So, but I always would be like, well, who else is y'all with y'all? And so I didn't have that conversation with her. But
Any other time you would?
any other time I would have. But I had what I was doing on my mind. Plus I had a thought I need to get my grandkids. I already had her little brothers and sisters with me. And so that goes through my thought process. Like, how could I intervene that moment, that day, that time?
I actually did feel like I failed my kids by not protecting them, even though it's unrealistic to think because they're adults and have their own life.
Yes.
But like you said, we protect our children, and I felt like I failed in that.
Yes.
And I also was supposed to go down that Saturday because Matt had it was like his first time, I think, taking tables on his own with Jazz. And I was going to come down, both Zach and I. We're going to have dinner, and we were going to hang out with him afterwards. And then at the last minute, I changed my mind, like I always do. And now I think about that, like, could I have stopped this from happening if I had gone?
Yeah.
It's horrible the way our minds go, trying to make sense of something that's nonsensical.
At all.
Oh.
Yeah. And then and one other things that helps me to work with forgiveness within myself, because when we begin talking about that before we here now, every time I'm talking or thinking about my daughter, or I go visit, I don't care if it's cold outside, I don't care if it was been raining, the clouds, as soon as I step out my car, and our children's bright smiles, they always laughing, they get, they'll make you laugh when we want to be mad,
I know.
So, and I got this, just look about myself, but I swear to you, every time I go visit her, the sun comes out. And the rain will stop for that moment. That cloud would split apart. Or if the sun is out, it's not on me, it's out. As soon as I get out, and I see that's her smile. And that's one of my fortes that my daughter had too. And I feel that.
Her energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll close with this. I had a dream 2 nights ago. I was in my house, and outside were Matt, Jasmine, and Tasha. And Jasmine was calling my name, Mom, Mom. I come to the window, and she's waving. She's like, hi. And Tasha's like, hi. And I was like, what are you guys doing? We're going to a barbecue. See you later. Yeah. And it made me, when I woke up, I smiled. I'm like, that is so Tasha and Jasmine.
Yeah.
Off to the barbecue, off to wherever. And it put me in a good mood to,
better space.
Yeah.
And that happens for me from time to time. And I remember the last time when I actually seen them two together outside, on the phone, we're talking or whatever, was at your place. And I didn't know you had lived not too far from me. And I was like, wow, because they said, they was like, Dad, Pops, come over here, we need a couple dollars. We're about to do something. So I'm like, all right. I was like, where y'all at? I said, that's 2 minutes away. She said, yeah. I said, well, that's where y'all be at? She's like, yeah, this is where Mom lives. And I'm like, wow, I never knew that. And you was in the back doing some little yard work or something. And you know how they come out the side of the house. And I'm like, you know, and that was one of my last moments seeing them two together. And so I always go back to that
Yeah.
and get, you know, and just their goofy self,
I know.
acting normal as be, and you
Yeah.
just looked over. I said, "Oh, they probably give it to her too." That's all I
They
could think
did.
about. That's all I could think about. And so them that's what lives with me. I go to those places.
You have to.
Yes.
We would
Yes.
we would die if we
Yes.
couldn't go to those places and
Yes.
you know always had this
Yes.
negative.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for
Thank you.
sharing with us today.
Thank you.
And I'm
Yes.
happy that we were able to have this conversation and to finally hang out a little bit because we kept
Yes.
saying we are going to
Yeah,
grab coffee
we're
and
gonna-
now we're having coffee and a podcast.
Yes.
So, as I said early on, forgiveness is a deeply personal choice. In our podcast show today, we share two sides of that, with no one way being the right way. Because at the end of the day, only you can decide what's best for you. Thank you, friends, for showing up today. We appreciate all of you. Next week, we will dive into how we can begin rebuilding life after loss. Please don't forget to like and follow us on your preferred podcasting site. And until next time, be well. Bye all.